Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 77, and it's Annie and the Magician, part 3. I've been enjoying writing this. There might be a little bit of background noise. Someone's been doing some sort of heavy lawn something. Didn't quite sound like a lawnmower, but I don't know what it was. It's still kind of going on, so I will definitely be cleaning this up for the audio version of this that's going out on iTunes and on the website. Hopefully it just won't be too bad as for the video version, and I hope you enjoy it. So here we go. "Where are we going?" Annie asked. "To my office," Quarry replied, "in one of the highest places of the keep." "I've never delivered food to you before," Annie noted. "No, you wouldn't have," Quarry said, as they walked down a long hall. "I'm new to this place, and I prefer eating in the main hall. I need to do business, and that is a good place to meet everyone I need to meet." "And what is your business?" "Magic, of course." Yes, but what does that include?" Quarry continued on. "Whatever I can think of. One of the great benefits of knowing magic," he said, and the way he was enunciating the words made Annie realize that this is something he felt important, "is that magic allows you to break the usual rules. And there are many people who find great value in that and will pay any amount for it." Annie thought about this. "So 3 of what you do is actually quite a high price. To free me, I mean." Query slowed and looked back at her, grinning. "Yes, it is quite a compliment, and I'm glad to know you're intelligent enough to realize it." He continued on, but now it was Annie who was grinning, hustling to keep up with the magician's pace. It was the first time she could remember feeling valuable. They mounted the stairs to one of the towers and started the long climb. There were several landings along the way with closed doors. Annie did not know what was behind them. One had a guard. They climbed up and up, and though used to work, Annie was getting a bit tired when they hit the top. Actually, there was a ladder and a door. The ladder goes to the open roof. If there's a siege, the soldiers can go up there and fire arrows and so on. But I chose the northwestern side, with the marshlands close by. It is unlikely they will ever need to go there, so I have even more privacy than I would up here. And I also have access to the open air, when needed." Annie nodded. Quarry unlocked the door and opened it. He swept in and gestured for Annie to follow. It was mostly one large room, with a tight curve behind her where the stairwell was, and a looser curve in front, the outside of the tower. There were more windows here, which could also have their glass moved aside to make arrow slits. There was also a flat wall, and Annie supposed that Quarry's bed must be on the other side, since there was no bed in this room. Instead, this room contained, well, Annie didn't know what the objects were. There were a number of tables with flasks of glass and metal and other things she didn't know how to name or even properly describe. Tubes, lanterns, and more. And flasks and phials, lots of them, everywhere. They often had little labels on them. "Can you read?" Quarry asked. "No, master," Annie replied. "We'll fix that as soon as possible," Quarry replied. "What is your family name?" he asked. "I have done. I was a foundling, and no one knew who my parents were," Annie replied. "Is Annie short for anything?" Quarry asked. "No, sir," she replied. "Then may I suggest one?" Quarry asked. Annie shrugged. "Let it be short for Anastasia." "I like it. It's pretty. But why?" "Words have meanings. Anastasia is a very old word for rebirth. Think of today as your rebirth day. Before, you were simply Annie, the foundling. Now you're Anastasia, apprenticed to a magician, someday to be a powerful magician herself." Annie, now Anastasia, beamed. "Yes, master." "In public, I will still call you Annie. No sense in letting others know of your change too early." Annie, feeling that a nod would not be enough, bowed deeply. "Thank you, master." They spent the rest of that day preparing for Annie's moving in. Quarry had a bed brought up and placed near the fireplace in the main room. If Annie, or Anastasia, as she had to remind herself she now also was, thought she would be doing magic immediately, she was soon put straight. "We have a lot of things to teach you before you get into the magic," Quarry said the next morning. "Especially reading. It shouldn't be too hard." It wasn't. Annie learned that the letters stood for sounds, and after that it was pretty simple. Still, it took weeks and weeks before she was doing more than sounding out single words. Query watched her reading with an expression she soon learned meant he was pleased with her progress. She also had lots of chores to do. As the apprentice, you will take away some of the drudgery that will allow me to do the more advanced magic work, and despite the simplicity of the chores, I would rather not trust them to a scullery maid or anyone else. Small errors can mean big problems in magic, and you will soon learn the pitfalls to avoid. Annie nodded, but hoped she would figure out the big pitfalls right away. She felt differently a few days later. The various vials and other equipment, much of which she knew the names to now, had to be very carefully cleaned. Query would inspect each before she was allowed to put it back. It didn't take long for her to become very good at this work. The only pitfall she had noticed was that if she didn't do the work well, she had to do it multiple times. While this work was, on its surface, more dull even than kitchen work she had done, it also allowed her some of her first glimpses of Query working on his magic. It took him hours, preparing, then going through his process. She really didn't understand any of it at first, and he was not yet telling her what he was doing or why. Sometimes he would be taking a liquid and pouring it into a fire or over a stone. Other times he would sit and apparently sleep or meditate with a device attached to him. At the end, he would take out a phial that would be partly filled with a clear liquid. One of these times, Query noticed her looking at the liquid. "Best come over here, Anastasia," he said. She liked her new name. It felt like a title coming from him, and never failed to create a sense of pride, something she had rarely felt before. "This," Query said, indicating the liquid, now in its small phial, "is ether. It is rare and difficult to make. It is the quintessence of what we do as magicians. Some say that ether is the matter of the heavens, and that we as magicians call whatever small amounts of ether is here on the earth to us. Others say that ether is the purest part of ourselves. I've spent my life looking for the answer to that and many other questions. I believe that the latter is the more true. That is because ether is much stronger for its maker than for anyone else. Remember that fiery protection I put on your forehead before putting the cold in your hand?" Anastasia nodded. "The fire was to protect you from the cold. But if I had used either on myself, I wouldn't need to put the protective opposite on first, and the amount I used would have made me much more powerful. The drop of fire I used could have burned the lizard man to a crisp. The several drops of cold would have frozen him in an instant, or shattered the bars of his prison. On you, it merely made your touch very painful to him. He felt the pain of cold, which of course is counter to his nature." "Why didn't the fire burn me then, at least before you put the cold on me?" Anastasia asked. "Because I know what I'm doing," Query replied. "So those were both ether too?" she asked. "Yes, indeed," Query said. "The pure ether is like a blank page or a clear glass of water. What you put on the page or put in the water determines what you have. For the paper, you might have a letter, a notice of execution, a story, a history, a warning message. For the drink, you might have mead, wine, juice. So we take the ether and we combine it with other things and bring out their essential natures. Then we have a real bit of magic, a tool that embodies fire, cold, strength, resilience, speed, and other things." "Thus your jacket with all its pockets," Annie observed. "Yes, indeed," Query said. "You're catching on, and this is why I needed you to know this part, because all of them, even the untouched ether, are dangerous if used improperly. If you dropped a phial of fire ether on the floor, the splashes would burn you badly, and any wood they touched would surely catch fire. That is why I've worked my whole life for a form of ether that no one else has been able to make, sanatum, the healing ether. I'm very close, Anastasia, very close. I'm hoping that we'll be able to make it soon. Think of it, wounds, accidents, likely even diseases, all swept away with a dose of sanatum. But it is dangerous, not just because it is unknown, and making new forms of ether is always dangerous, but also because as soon as it is known we have the power to heal, we will be in danger." "In danger?" Annie asked, unable to stop herself. "Won't we just be in demand?" "Yes, but by the most dangerous people," Query replied. "Do you know what proportion people die in war on the battlefield versus other reasons?" Annie shook her head. "It is about 1 in 4, Query replied. 1/4 die on the battlefield, 1/4 die from blood loss, and a full half die from diseases, either from wounds or just from too many men being packed together. That means that if you could prevent 3/4 of your normal military deaths and get them back on the battlefield quickly, any army with that ability would be as powerful as one many times its size. So every military will want it, and also will want it kept out of the hands of their enemies. Both desires will have their dangers to us. So this is a project you are not to speak about with others, understand? Yes, Master, Anastasia replied. She truly felt like Anastasia now that she had been given a secret by her master. And that's where we're going to stop today. Of course, there will be more next week. I'm looking forward to writing it, and I hope you're enjoying this so far. Although no big actions took place today, we did get some character development and some of the desires, especially of Kurare, and a little bit of Annie's character as well, and a little bit of world building, of course, in addition. So, CryptoBiography will be back, of course, next Sunday. If you have comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography at gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. Thank you very much for listening. Words and Music, copyright 2018, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved.